The NFL draft has come to its conclusion, and your Kansas City Chiefs made the selection. FAU from K-State is now a Kansas City Chief manning the edge. It was a wild night. We're going to break it down right now on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, friends and neighbors. Night one of the NFL draft for 2023 is in the books. The Chiefs have a new defensive end to chase passers around and try to help balance out this team. We have a lot to talk about. Tonight's episode is brought to you by Ultimate GM. If you've ever dreamed of being your own GM and managing a football franchise, now's how you do it. Get to ultimate-gm.com and get signed up. Take a look at the app stores. You can find it there as well. Our listeners get 100% bonus boost right now when they use the code Locked On in all caps in the game. Check out Ultimate Football GM. Ton coming at you here. It's been an eventful night. We have a ton of information to go over. If you haven't gotten it yet, or you want to know more about FAU or any other players selected tonight on night one, go to rogueapc.com, use the code MATRIXLOC, and get yourself the draft guide, because there's all kinds of info in there. We're going to talk a bunch about it tonight, but there's plenty more selections tomorrow. On my draft board, FAU was the next guy to go. He was edge 7. He went edge 7. I just had him slightly farther down. I had him on day 2 in the 30s. I don't think this was a large reach. And quite frankly, when there's only 19 players on the board in the first round, Chiefs couldn't have gotten their guy unless they moved up. When that opportunity didn't occur, I think they made a good selection here. I'm really confident he'll be able to come in and play significant downs in this system. How do you feel about the selection of Felix and Anudike-Uzomah?
Yeah, I think it was a great pickup by them. I'm Chris Clark from Chiefs Corner. A lot of stuff to talk about today when we start getting into this draft. And one of the things that really came out after the draft concluded was, Brevich was trying to trade up. It sounds like he was trying to make a move up to go get somebody. And none of the AFC teams really decided they wanted to help Kansas City go move up and get a guy. So it makes a lot of sense where they stayed where they were. They took the guy that they wanted to take. It could have gone a couple of different directions, but once all the wide receivers kind of went in the 20s, 19 to 22 or 23, at that point it became a situation where more than likely you were going to end up going defensive end. You could have gone maybe a guy like Matt Bergeron as offensive tackle, but to me that would have been a little bit high for him. But at the same time, absolutely, you're in a situation where now you have a guy that is 21 years old, which I think is actually one of his best quality. I hate saying best, but one of his biggest qualities, in my opinion, because he is so young. He is still growing into his body. He's still growing into the game. And it's a guy that is going to be able to grow with this defense and with George Karlaftis.
Yeah, and I think that's what it buys you here. It was a crazy first round. We'll talk about how it happened here coming up in the next segment. But in the end, that's exactly what you get as a bookend. Back-to-back young guys at a position that is ultimately, despite the presence of Chris Jones on this roster, is the premier front 7 position. Now you have youth there. You have youth at corner. You have that balance on the defensive roster that allows you to do a little bit of everything. Now, Felix is way more bendy than George Karlaftis was. He is very explosive as well, but he plays with power. And he's played inside in K-State's front that often ran a 3-man front. He can play all the way into 3 technique, but I think he's probably most experienced and played in 2022 the most at 4-eye. But in the Chiefs scheme, he will be an outside 7-tech to 9-tech defensive end, rushing the passer, doing Spags-type things and Spags-type system. But he has some of the traits that Joe Cullen likes as well. I think it's a really nice hybridization of the position. A Frank Clarkish type player, and a lot younger and a lot less.
Maybe even a Tamba Hawley-like player. I've heard comments.
We'll see.
I've heard motor-wise he's a lot like Tamba Hawley, and that's really where I'm going with that. He is a nonstop motor. He is a guy that's always going to go after the quarterback and give you everything he has. So I think that's really where that comparison comes from. But like I said, I really like the fact that they went and got a guy that is 21 years old, because they had another chance. They could have gone with a guy like Keon White, who's 24. And while age doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to become a better player at 21 versus 24, this gives you an opportunity to have a guy that could stick around till he's 29, 30 and give you 7-8 years. I think that's really a bonus here. If he can figure it out in the NFL, and I think that he's in a great place with Joe Cullen, I think that this is a good signing, or this is a good draft for Kansas City. And the other part of what came out was Kansas City was also looking and considering trading back, but everything that they were looking to trade back for was going to take them into the mid-40s. That's a lot further than they wanted to go. They wouldn't have got Felix Uzomah at that point. So I get why they went the way they did.
Yeah, this came down to a couple of options that may have worked out, may not have worked. If a team passed on a player or two, this could have been different. But I think the way that it fell, he was the best option to get on the field and help them immediately. We'll talk about some of the things that did happen, some of the things that didn't happen after this, but we got to tell you about our pals first.
And I'm going to tell you about our friends over at Ultimate Football GM. This is one of my favorite games that I've ever played on my phone. Really have enjoyed this game. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. You've heard us talk about this mobile game app, and if you've ever thought you'd make a good GM, you got to give this game a try. It's not as easy as you might think to create a dynasty. When you play Ultimate Football GM, you get to control and manage every strategic aspect of your team as you play through seasons and lead your team to glory, trying to build a historic dynasty. One of the things I really loved about this, you get to go draft players. You get to assign players to free agency. You get to decide the type of offense and the type of defense that you're going to run, and you get to go get the guys that are going to be able to run that the best at head coach and player-wise. It dives into just about everything you would as a GM. I really enjoyed that part of it. Won a couple of championships. You could play over 25 seasons. It's a lot of fun. With Ultimate Football GM, you're responsible for controlling the destiny of your franchise by hiring the right coaches and coordinators, managing all the finances, including negotiating player salaries and terms, navigating your franchise through the free agency and the draft, and other player personnel issues. All this in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Football GM is completely free and playable offline. Play on the go as you want and when you want to. Locked On Chiefs listeners get 100% free boost to their franchise when they use promo code Locked On in all caps in the game store. That's Locked On in all caps. So make sure to check it out today. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the app stores. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today.
So an event-filled first round, a lot of trade action. And I know the Chiefs were involved in several conversations about trading up. They didn't seem to materialize. I can't say that I blame the rest of the league about not wanting to allow the Chiefs to come up and get blue chip talent in this particular draft. When it's in their hometown and they're coming off of a championship, I did like the bit where they get to show off the trophies before they make the selection at 31. That was kind of nice. But
Clark Hunt bringing the trophy onto the stage was nice as well.
Yeah, top that off as the trifecta. So I can understand why they didn't get an opportunity to move up. It was very intriguing that they had a chance to move down, but didn't feel that they could either get Felix or talent of his ilk. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. I was surprised Will McDonald went so high at edge. He is not. I think he was overdrafted compared to where I do believe he has him. B.J. Ojulari is not.
Surprised me. Sorry.
Yeah, maybe a bit. I have Lucas as a defensive tackle, so I think those were in higher demand because I think there's fewer of them. B.J. Ojulari is not a fit in the Spags true system. He is a stand-up 3-4 outside linebacker only. He's the one edge that I actually had rated as an overall grade above Felix that didn't go. But here's the thing. I had Felix as the number 7 edge on my board. He is the number 7 edge that went. So it's good relative value. And he brings to the Chiefs what they needed is a player that can play with both power and explosion, whereas BJ is more of a finesse, speed type rusher. Has a similar array of actual techniques and moves. I do think Felix is going to be able to survive and fit into this defense a lot better because of what we saw George Karlaftis, Mike Dana, and now Charles Omenihu plan to do in moving inside to outside. These are all guys that can play in as far as 3 tech and move all the way out to wide 9. So this entire defensive front now is a hodgepodge that they can put anywhere at any time. Steve Spagnuolo can have fun running this front.
Well, and I have to wonder, and we don't need to spend a ton of time on this, but I want to ask you the question. If Nolan Smith doesn't go to at 30, to the Eagles. Does Kansas City take him instead?
I think so. I certainly was pounding the table for that. We were live on RGR at the time, and Matt Derrick was with us for a bit. And he agreed as well that the fit there, he was just too explosive an athlete to ignore. Can I guarantee that? No, because I wasn't in the room at Arrowhead Drive. But I do
But
think
you would have
that
gone
was
that direction.
I would have. If they had not made that selection, I think he would be a Chief, and I certainly would have made him one.
Yeah, and I really do think that you're probably right. I think Nolan Smith is probably going to be a guy that they didn't expect to be there. And obviously, Kansas City wasn't going quarterback, so Will Levis wasn't really an option. Hendon Hooker wasn't an option. But the interesting thing is I would have expected a team to try to trade up and go get one of those guys so they could have the fifth-year option on the QBs.
Yeah, I agree with you. Now, I had Hendon Hooker as a first-round talent. I still believe that he should have been because I think his floor is that good. I'm not surprised by Will Levis. I have Will Levis in the 50s. Coming tomorrow is my expectations. We might be in to see a fall for Will Levis. And while I thought the Chiefs possibly could get a trade-in partner to come to 31 to get that fifth year on a quarterback, we might see Will Levis fall all the way down to the Chiefs' next selection, and they could have an opportunity to make a trade and acquire more capital.
Well, and I do think it's also interesting that you were in a situation where they could have, you could argue Hendon Hooker should have been a first-round pick. Kansas City could have traded out, gotten another pick, but gone down to the 40s. Obviously, they probably wouldn't have got Felix in the 40s, I don't think, just based on the way that this draft was going. I think that you were looking at a situation where he's probably gone in the next 10 picks. So that's probably not an option if you want to keep him as your selection. And quite frankly, the other side of it is I don't think you're going to get a ton of value trading back, especially just trading back to the 40s. Are you going to get another second-round pick? No. You're going to get another third or fourth-round pick? Probably. Is that worth giving up your defensive end that you think can start and be that guy? Because I really do think that they see him as their right defensive end for next year and a guy that is going to be a starter for them for a long time. And a guy that can rotate with Charles Omenihu. I think that it's going to be all over the place, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I mean, Omenihu go break down inside George Karlaftis, Chris Jones, now Felix Uzomah, all going after the quarterback on third down.
Yeah, I like that option as well. And again, it doesn't have to be Felix outside and Omenihu inside. They can flip that. They can rotate that. Everybody can go everywhere, and I think that allows them to play the matchups they're facing, particularly when it comes to attacking Orlando Brown and the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, and that's going to be a big question as to how they're going to attack him. And this is a guy that could really get after Orlando Brown. So that's something that I think will be interesting to see how they use that in the future because they're going to be going up against the Bengals each year. I will say we do need to continue to talk about this pick that the Chiefs had, but I have to also say the Bills trading up to go get another tight end I found very interesting to me. That is going to continue to be something that I think is going to be interesting to see how the different offenses in the NFL continue to evolve.
Yeah, it's a copycat league, and I think the Bills are doing a good job of following the Chiefs down the 12 personnel, 13 personnel eventually model. Dawson Knox is a guy that can get loose and has against the Chiefs at times. Now Dalton Kincaid is a guy that can attack the seams much like Travis Kelce does. This makes it harder to defend. So I expect the Chiefs to pick up some safety or some possible linebacker coverage type help tomorrow in order to fill out those ranks in the middle of the hashes that were susceptible last year, that now the Bills are designing themselves to be able to attack, as well as the Chargers, who picked up another Mike Williams-style receiver, one Quentin Johnson, that was rumored to be coming to Kansas City. A lot of guys, a lot of teams are trying to gun for the Chiefs right now.
Yeah, and when you bring up going to get a safety type or a linebacker type to try to do that coverage, I don't know that it happens tomorrow. I think that Kansas City is probably going to be looking at the two other positions that they really have needs at, and that's going to be wide receiver and that's going to be tackle. I think that you can see both those positions taken next on the draft for day 2. Maybe that happens day 3 that they go get another guy, another linebacker or safety type. Maybe they get one on day 2. I figure that with the way that this draft has fallen so far, if they're going to try to get a wide receiver, if they're going to try to get a tackle, they're going to have to do it with their day 2 picks, because I don't think that they can wait to day 3 and get a guy that they think can contribute at those positions.
Yeah, could very well be. Let's see how many picks they end up with. I do expect them to try and move around again on day 2. And let's take a look at some of the prospects that are going to be available there. We'll set the table right after this.
If you're looking for a delicious snack but don't want all the sugar and calories, then you need the best tasty protein bar ever built. You got to try this. If you're like me and you want to make a healthier snack choices, but you don't want to compromise on taste, I've got just the thing for you. Built Bars and Built Puffs. Built Bars are healthy and taste amazing. What makes Built Bars so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real dark chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. And they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and cookies and cream. And now you don't have to wait to get a box. For years, we've been talking about ordering Built Bars at Built.com, but now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club, while you can still get your specialty flavors at Built.com. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today, walk to the pharmacy section, and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate bar, or coconut puff. If you're close to Sam's Club, run in and get a 13-bar box with our hit flavors, brownie batter puff and churro puff. You can thank us later.
I will thank you later because the Chiefs have options.
They do have options. And really quick, before we get into the options that are still out there, I want to show this because to me, you start looking at the profile of Felix Anudike-Uzomah, and this kind of gives you an idea of what you're getting athletically from this player.
It really does. And what you see here is that while he's not an elite athlete, he is capable of making some pretty important moves here. His strongest, he's 23rd overall in the matrix at the position, but his change of direction, his short area quickness matrix is top 10. It's number 8 in this particular class. And that's what we come back to when you talk about edge benders. He's not that style physically. His torso doesn't contort that much, but he's able to change direction like somebody that does. And I think that's the key. Again, you mentioned that he's only 21 years old. He has the ability to still manipulate his game, to grow his game. And I do think physiologically he can work on flexibility and get some of that to actually get better as he becomes a pro. It's not always the case, but he plays with plenty of power, and that's kind of the given to play for Steve Spagnuolo. But now he has the ability to be a two-dimensional type player and being able to bend around the edge as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of things to like in that aspect, and I do think that that's something that they're going to continue to be watching over the next couple of draft picks is how are players going to fit into the system. There's still a lot of things that Kansas City could do with this draft. You look at the guys and, like we were saying, looking at Felix's, his different strengths and his abilities, but you look at some of the other guys that are out there. I mean, you look at some of the tackles. Blake Freeland has been a guy that people have been saying could be a Kansas City pick just because he was from BYU. I think that makes a lot of sense. There's still wide receivers out there that they could like if they want to go that direction. They didn't end up getting Zay Flowers or Quentin Johnston, and that's going to be something that could end up coming back to haunt them. But at the same time, they're in a situation where they didn't have to go out and get a wide receiver. They have enough talent there to get by if they have to. It's more of a want than necessarily absolutely have to go get.
I agree. And I'll tell you this, the BYU connection aside, I don't know that's the driving force, but Blake Freeland is very, very athletic and fits the mold of the, not to compare him directly to him, but the Eric Fisher type. I think that is something exactly that Andy Reid is probably looking for. In the end, Blake Freeland in particular will be a day 2 tackle. I do believe that. And he is matrix 1 for the offensive line. That's something to keep an eye on there. And then you come down to Braden Daniels of Utah, University of Utah, also out there in that state. Also a very long, a very athletic tackle, can play in at guard as too. I think he's 6'4.25". So not quite the size of the 6'7" and 7/8 Blake Freeland, but certainly a guy that can come in and play multiple roles. And so I think there's a lot of athleticism at tackle left here on day 2. Matt Bergeron's there as well. I do believe he's a guard more in this Chiefs system than he is a tackle. But those are the guys that I do believe could be fits. Then you get into tier 4 on day 3. If we have to talk about offensive tackle, then we can cover that. We also have day 2 wide receivers that I think could be fits. I really like the fit for Rashee Rice in this particular offense. There's the big X styles. Those are Cedric Tillman. A.T. Perry is my favorite of the group. Then you have Jonathan Mingo, very popular around Kansas City. You get into the smaller guys in Josh Downs, Jalen Hyatt, Marvin Mims that offer some speed options as well. And we all know the Kansas City Chiefs like to have speed.
Yeah, and the big thing is a lot of people were starting to wonder if Jalen Hyatt would go to Kansas City at the end of the first round, and they didn't pull the trigger there. I think that was a good move on their part as well. I think that would have been a reach. And I still think that you look at how this draft fell, and I still think that Uzomah would have been gone probably by pick 40. So if they would have traded back, there's no way that they're going to get him at the edge position, and maybe they would have gone a different direction. And we have people in the chat asking, would you have moved up for Anton Harrison? I think it's hard when you see all the tackles that went, and then you start seeing the different players that are going ahead of, the different teams that are picking ahead of you. One of the biggest things that stands out, and this was something that Brett Veach and Andy Reid talked about afterwards, was teams from the AFC aren't willing to trade with them. And that really hurts you. If you're not able to get picks done or picks traded with those types of teams, regardless of who you're going with, you're going to have a hard time trading up. So, it would have been like Detroit or Minnesota or those types of guys that would have been willing to trade. Dallas, maybe even. But obviously at this point, that's not an issue. And I think that they'll be okay without Harrison. But I can see why people would ask the question.
Yeah, I can understand that too. I don't think Harrison was a prospect worth moving up for, to tell you the truth. And you got to remember, once you get past 22, any AFC team is a team you knocked out of the playoffs. No one's going to help you there, especially when you're coming off a championship right now. So I don't think there was much else that could have been done. I do think it may be loosening up on day 2. We'll see what comes next. But I do think the top needs are still the top needs in wide receiver and offensive tackle, having taken care of the edge. I feel like they've gotten off to a start that I think their top 100s are still going to come out pretty well, that they're going to be able to help them this year in 2023.
Well, and the other side of that for me is not only that, but you've also got a situation where now they have all these extra picks. I mean, they still have 9 picks to go. And we've talked about this all draft season. They're not going to make all those picks, I don't think. So when you start getting into the second and third round, those picks become more valuable because they will get you up higher in the draft. So you have a situation where maybe you're trading away some of your a 4th round pick to move up in the second round and go get a guy in the late 50s or the early 50s. Maybe that's what you're doing. You got to look at the talent there and decide if that's the direction you want to go.
Well, we have to keep in mind too, as of now, DeAndre Hopkins is still an Arizona Cardinal. Just because the first round's over doesn't mean that can't change. There's still deals to be done.
But they did come out and say that they don't expect a trade to be happening, though.
It's the perfect time to go make a trade.
Yeah, well, we'll see how that ends up happening. That's still a big question with all the salary cap implications that a trade like that would make. So a lot of questions when it comes to that. But I think Kansas City's in a good position to go into day 2 of this draft and be in a position to go and get a guy that they really want at any position that they want in the second and third round.
Agreed. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens tomorrow. I do think we could see some movement up, down, or sideways. We'll see what happens. We will have you every step of the way. When the Chiefs make a selection, we will break it down for you here on Locked On Chiefs. You can find our shorts, our mid-length, as well as our full shows over on the YouTube channel. Please like, sub, and hit the bell over there. And get in on the audio platform so you can listen when you happen to be doing something else and you don't have a screen near you. We appreciate your time. Hope you enjoyed night 1 of the NFL draft. We'll be back with you following night 2. I look forward to it. Thanks for staying up late with us. We'll talk to you tomorrow.